Thank you for joining us. I'm Christina with NeuroTracker. We are so delighted to have Rob Gronbeck. It's morning for him in Australia. He's a human performance consultant, and he's joining us. He's been a longstanding customer of NeuroTracker for over 9 years. He's an author, keynote speaker. He's been using NeuroTracker for over 7 years, and about 2 years ago migrated over to the NeuroTrackerX, which is our virtual platform that actually replaces our old standalone system. So he's going to take a few minutes today and talk to you about how he uses dual tasking with his clients, patients, athletes in NeuroTracker. So hi, Rob. Thank you for joining us. Maybe if you want to take a minute and give a little bit of background on yourself. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this and to share your expertise. We're so happy to have you.
It's a pleasure. I got started in NeuroTracker in 2014, as we were just discussing. And at first, I discounted the software, and I thought that the website and the slide shares didn't really look up to scratch. But so I put it on the shelf for a couple of months. Came back to it in my bookmarks, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was seeing peer-reviewed journals, Journal of Clinical Psychology, Nature articles with really top-level research showing improvements in cognitive function and what that could mean in both athletes and other populations. And being an amateur athlete, an aspiring athlete, and someone working in the sports psychology field, it ended up being a no-brainer. So I ended up selling my TV and my PlayStation and getting a loan. And this is, years later, but the journey has been wonderful. As it shows, 8,000 sessions, done 1,000 personally, as well as watched a bunch of those sessions for all my clients. So I'm here. I'd love to share everything I know about neurotechnologies and flow and everything, but I'm just going to focus on some key principles, and also provide you with some case studies on what I feel are two great examples of how to use dual tasks to really keep your clients engaged. Because client retention, let's face it, it's a problem. How often do you get someone that comes in, does a few sessions or does a couple of months sessions, and they kind of think they're done. They get a bit bored, or they're not sure how to progress themselves, especially with the NeuroTrackerX when they're on their own. I've always worked with people one-on-one in the same room. So I'm closely watching them, closely seeing what they're capable of, and then progressing them forward. And the reason we want to retain our clients is not just for us. It's because when we train NeuroTracker, we're training a state. And that state is that frontal and occipital visual lobe, high functioning beta and gamma spikes. And then after we've done our training, our brain kind of goes back to the way it was, everyday normal, blah, 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 blah. But the more you do that over countless hours of deliberate practice, that state, which many athletes I would work with, they would do their NeuroTracker before going to training because they wanted to get in the right state. They wanted their brain to be firing. You do this enough time, that state becomes a trait. And your default is very much a high focus, spatial awareness, visual perception, uptime in the moment. And that's what we want. So we want to keep people for longer so they get the maximum benefit. They're not just needing to do it before a training, but they're already switched on the majority of the time in their life. So I've already written about flow triggers on the NeuroTracker website, and done a lot of video with NeuroTracker on flow. But we want to specifically, when it comes to client retention, we want to take that balance between frustration and boredom. And look, NeuroTracker already does a really good job at that, because NeuroTracker has that staircase where if you get it right, it says, well done, buddy, try this speed. You get that wrong, it drops you back. So it never pushes you so far where you're getting so many wrong. And it's never too slow where you're like, man, this is so boring. I can't believe I'm doing this. So generally you'll get about anywhere from 75 to 85% targets correct. And that's a beautiful sweet spot in terms of retention, in terms of keeping people, giving them a positive experience. So that's the first thing when it comes to retaining people. Keep it interesting. Don't make it too hard. Don't make it too boring. Keep or constantly change. And we'll get to that in a moment. And the final thing, that we really want to create a mastery orientation. We want to be a coach that your clients want to return to. Smith and Small, from the two researchers from the University of Washington, studied Little League baseball coaches, and they literally sat there and they looked at all their behaviors. And they found that certain behaviors from the coach had the kids wanting to come back, enjoying themselves, feeling like a part of a crew. Whereas other behaviors, kids would just quit, leave teams and not come back. And so I encourage you as a coach to look at Smith and Small's research. It's very simple: 4 basic behaviors to do: encouragement, reinforcement, and also good positive instruction. There's one other one, I can't remember it. And there's 4 things just not to do. Like, don't be on your phone, don't be critical. So just basic human things we can do as coaches or consultants to get people to come back. So that's my take on, the maximum amount of benefit we can get is to help encourage people that this is going to be your new normal, your focus state. We're going to keep it engaging. And we also want to be a really, really top coach. And my experience is that one of the best ways you can keep that frustration, boredom, sweet spot is to use dual tasks. Now, if you've seen any of the NeuroTracker videos, you'll see that there's always people doing tasks and things, or there's that great NeuroTracker progression video on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It gives you a beautiful example of how we can progress people. Because when you think about NeuroTracker, when you're sitting down, it's your frontal lobes and your occipital lobes that are doing the majority of the work. And they're chewing up energy like you wouldn't believe. Now, when we add another task, say like balancing, other parts of the brain, like your cerebellum and your sensory motor cortex and your motor cortex, they all need energy too. So now there's less energy for the front lobes and the visual lobes, which means there's often a drop in score because the brain can't track as fast. But over time, what happens is we end up improving as a result of neuroadaptation and the brain becoming more efficient, being able to do things at one time. But what happens is we end up hitting a plateau. There's that nice, beautiful rookie bonus, and we improve. And then there's that slow, steady. I remember being on a plateau I'm still on a plateau for years. And it was like, when am I going to get that next breakthrough? And what I found is that when you add a task that makes someone's visual tracking speed drop, and then they can integrate and improve, that's as good as an increase, because any growth is growth. So it's like, I used to do this balancing on a Swiss ball, and now, and I used to get 3, and now I get 2 or 1.5. But now I can do 3, which is just a speed, while I'm balancing on the Swiss ball. And that is how you manage the plateau. You give dual task challenges, which drop someone's score, and then they persist at it, and then they can do that score that they used to not be able to do while doing that task. So the other reason why we do NeuroTracker with dual task is it gives us a really robust focus. Like it almost helps you to keep focused anywhere. And finally, with dual task, in the beginning, you're very much programming. You design the program, you design the progression, basic things like sitting, standing, balancing. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, what do the clients want? Are they a skier? Like I've written Brian here. Brian was my longest serving client. He did over 400 sessions, and he was a retired veteran, avid skier. And after a while, after about a year in, he was like, okay, today we're doing this, and today we're doing that. And can we get those fit lights out so I can, or can we do this, or can we do that? In the end, he took charge of his programming specific to him, and he was creative. And so part of this engagement is to get full buy-in, get the person understanding the system, and then go, okay, what do you think you could do? What would be important for you? What would be a challenge you would like to try? And that's been I've had some of the best sessions from those kind of sessions. So yeah, there is a whole new dimension of training. I've never jumped up on a box while doing NeuroTracker. It looks pretty gnarly. I'll have to give that one a crack. But some of the things we can do, like any balancing task you can do, breath work or toning or singing. I mean, why not? where all these videos are, and I love these videos, but all these videos are athletes and boxers and hockey sticks. But any task you can do where you can still maintain your forward peripheral vision, you can incorporate into it. Obviously, I've just talked about athletes, so ball passing or catching. I remember one young athlete ended up playing for the Australian under 18 Matildas, the national squad, and I'm passing the ball to her while she's dodging a beam on the screen, and she was just like, "I love this. This is the best thing ever." I've had some clients play guitar. I've done some juggling. So juggling balls, only 3, while following NeuroTracker. Pretty tough stuff, but I was curious, and it was very interesting to see what happens to this gentleman's guitar playing. You might need to recite a speech, or do a sales script, or even have a conversation with someone while you're doing NeuroTracker. Normally it's like, get off your phone, but this would be a purposeful, intentional reason to have a conversation with someone, or reciting a speech, skipping rope, exercise bike, getting on the rower. That was an interesting one. Kettlebells. There are many different ways, and ultimately it can come down to physical. It can come down to linguistic. It can come down to, you can use mathematical, or you can interpersonal. So if you think of Howard Gardner's 7 different kind of intelligences, you can pretty much layer any of those. You can have a conversation with yourself if you want, which is your intrapersonal. So any kind of task that you can do doesn't have to be a physical task. It can be reciting a speech, breath work, which I found really useful to do. So hopefully that gives you a little, opens up the playing field and gives you some ideas, and also to ask and request and get information from your clients. What do you want to try? What would be really useful to you? And novelty is the rule. And that's how you maintain that, at least you stave off boredom, by creating novelty. Now, how often? I've tried novelty every session. I've tried novelty every couple of weeks, every couple of months. That can depend on the client. But novelty is definitely the rule. We just don't want to make it so haphazard that we're not actually developing skills and seeing growth. So I picked 2 case studies as I was requested, as examples of some of the work that I'm most proud of. So I'll get into them. So the first case study was Jackson Richardson, Jats, Richo, great bloke, lives in my hometown, and came to work with me for some sports psychology help. He'd broken his leg, fractured, had a bad gnarly accident. He was returning to riding. And it turned out that when I did get him in to work with me, his visual tracking speed was pretty low. Sorry, Richo. And he just needed to process the track faster. And I saw this as something that could really, really help him and his riding. So what we did is we worked on sports psychology initially with breathing and visualization, but then he committed to 3 times a week for 3 months. Now, this isn't the greatest example of a long-term work. But this is more of an example of how to really optimize dual tasking for someone who is a professional athlete. And so we worked 3 times a week for 3 months, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I think it was 1 p.m. And I wanted to work him towards a simulation type training, which what I meant is I started him at seated, and then standing, and then balancing on a ball, and then ended up dodging a beam on the screen, and then put him on an exercise bike and had him pedaling. Because when he's riding and he's carrying this giant beast of a bike, his heart rate's pumping. And so I want to simulate that. And a way to simulate that was put him on an exercise bike and have him pedal as hard as he could. At the same time, once he'd got conditioned to that and showed he could do that, I found some GoPro, a GoPro recording from one of his competitors, who the GoPro was on that guy's camera, on his helmet, and he was in a race, and you could hear the engine, you could hear the crowd. It was pretty cool. So we put those 2 things together. So he's racing as hard as, riding as hard as he could. His heart rate's going 1,000,000 miles an hour. We've got the sounds of his sport in the background while he's doing NeuroTracker. So we really wanted to simulate as best as possible his ability, and to know that with all these sounds and with his heart rate up, he could process. he could maintain his peripheral vision awareness. And what we found was everything felt slower. And he said, you can't teach what I look for on the, because that's all specific stuff, looking for a certain wedge or track to ride into. I didn't teach him a thing about that, but everything just felt slower for him. It turned out that he increased his processing speed by close to 500%. He also went on to become the Australian champion. So good on you, Richo, you bloody legend. And hit his top 10 in the Monster League racing, which was initially one of his original goals. So to recap, someone comes in and they want to perform at the highest level. What does their environment look like? And then we backtrack and we gradually progress them through dual tasks, because standing is a dual task, balancing is a dual task, dodging a beam on the screen or skipping rope is a dual task. But eventually we built it up so it physiologically, his posture, the sounds, everything sounded as close as possible as we could. We could have got him in his race gear. I didn't think of that. Get his helmet on. I did that with my Australian kendo clients, where they put their full kendo on and they had their shinai in front of them, and they even put on their helmets. Very hard to track balls when you've got a helmet with bars on it. So there's lots of ways we could have done that, but that's an example of using dual tasks to progress someone through. So that was some really early work, like 2014. I was very, very, very excited to work with someone that was a professional and was committed and came in 3 times a week and just got it done. So hats off. I always love working with clients who are willing to put the work in, who are coachable, who go, yep, let's do it. So I hope you find many clients like that, because they are the best. So the second case study was a police officer who came to me, found out about me because he'd failed the tactical training to get into tactical police squad. So if you think of the Navy SEALs, they have their 7-day hell week where they're put through the water and tased and not and sleep deprived and whatnot. Well, there was a 3-day similar thing held in the middle of the year in Sydney, super cold. And came to me because he felt like he'd failed and he'd wanted to have another go at it, and he wanted to improve his psychological capacity and develop that mental toughness. So I had an idea of the scenario that he was needing to focus and thrive in. So we worked on strengthening his mind in concentration as focus, and this was a 6-month training program. Again, not the longest training program, but I love this example because what I did was I put him through the normal learning system, seated. Okay, he's improved a fair bit, 20, 30 sessions. Let's get him standing. Let's get him balancing. But now the scenario, he's going to be in this environment where he's got people yelling at him, telling him to quit, telling him he's useless, freezing conditions, just completely overloaded. So my task was to simulate that. So I would ridicule him. I would tell him that my mum could do better. I'd call him number 5. Really, really intense verbal, social attacking, because he was not going to have to get used to that. Now you may go, that's pretty hardcore. I enjoyed it a little bit, but I was there to serve. And in the end, he ended up laughing at me every time I did that. And that was really good, because that's just practicing him that he's just going to laugh at these instructors that are going to try and tell him to quit and so on and so forth. So we had him similar to Jats, put him on the bicycle and put on the NeuroTracker about 3 times, about 30% faster than he was capable of. So I really wanted to overload him. And also had him put some water in his mouth and pedal as hard as he could while breathing through his nose. Now, if you don't know already, breathing through your nose is one of the best ways to maintain your composure. So if there's anything you take from today, breathe in and out through the nose way more, even while exercising, as much as you can. And really put him under the pump, ridicule him, I had him stand in a bucket of ice water while doing NeuroTracker. And that was tough, because the pain going through his feet, you know what it's like when you step in cold water, but just in ice cold, like buckets of ice. So really pushed him to his limits, and also had him, doing a lot of breath and biofeedback training. So that was a great progression. We really wanted to create as much of a simulation as possible. This could be a webinar on sport simulation. In the end, we boosted his psychological resilience. He did complete at that time. And he also increased his processing speed by 160%. Now, I didn't work so much at progressing him. I just wanted to see an improve with him. So that 160% improvement was very early on. And then I would just hammer him with really hard, really like speeds that were way faster than he would look. But he needed to deal with frustration. I needed to turn the frustration up level 1,000% so he could get comfortable in feeling overloaded. Wrote this beautiful letter to me as a testimonial, and I'm just very grateful for that. He did complete the most physically and mentally demanding pre-selection course in his organization, and something that he'll be proud of for years to come. And I'm super proud of him because I pushed him really hard. And as a coach, we're there to support and challenge. And it's about finding that nice balance. And that's a similar balance between boredom and frustration. We want to challenge, but not too much, and support, but not make things too easy. So it's that fine balance as a coach of keeping the tasks and the challenges in the right level. So ultimately, are we flow hacking? Well, you may have read some of my articles on flow, the art of flow, part 1 and 2 on the NeuroTracker website. Have a look at those, because NeuroTracker does an amazing job at really creating a state of flow where you're focused and you're aware and you're getting feedback, and then you're using your body, using balance. It's a bit risky, and you can also bring other people in. You can create things. You can create new sessions. And ultimately, as a coach, you want to be involved. I was always lucky. I was always there to be in real time with people, encourage them, and share those victories with them. But you can still, take part and challenge and be a part of people's training with the X program. And as for the ongoing benefits, they continue to evolve. One thing I know that the NeuroTracker Pro version allowed us to do was it allowed us to reduce the amount of times that the balls stay orange. So they normally set at about 2.5 seconds. But how about, and this is what I've done over the years, and I know that this will be a feature that comes into the NeuroTrackerX down the track, is after 2.5 seconds, well, let's make that 1.5 seconds. Let's make that half a second. Let's make that 0.1 of a second, where the balls just flash in 0.1 of a second. So that's another way in which we can make things harder, progress people through, give people added challenges, and make them far more efficient and far more effective in terms of their visual processing speed. So that went through so quickly. I hope that's been useful, and look forward to hearing any questions or insights you've got from this training. So Christina, Armando, everyone, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. That was fantastic. And thank you for sharing your insight. I'm just going to open it up if anybody has any questions. And maybe if you want to go to the next slide as well, Rob, just to make sure that everybody also has your contact information. Everybody, if you're looking for a NeuroTracker license, we offer, it's new, it's been about 2 weeks. We now offer a monthly subscription. So it's $35 a month. You can go on our website and purchase that. Or obviously, if you purchase an annual subscription, it's 30% off, so $299 for the year. That includes the 3D anaglyph glasses as well. We ship worldwide. There is my contact information. If you have any sales related questions, feel free to give me a shout. And Rob's contact information there, the owner of Brain Room. So if you want to check out his site, please do so. Okay, Rob, I'm going to take a few questions. Just 1 second here.
Awesome.
Is there any dual track things you tried that you do not recommend? Is a question from Corey.
I saw that, Corey, and it's a really interesting question. Do you have any that you wouldn't recommend? Well, first of all, really be paid. Like I've worked with some other populations, such as those with Parkinson's, such as those with traumatic brain injuries. And so balance, you got to be careful with balance, that's the right move. Heck, unfortunately, on Mother's Day, my mum falls over while my elderly mother falls over. And it's never good for someone to have a fall while playing table tennis. So you think, oh yeah, mum will be right. But, all too easily, things can go pear-shaped when you don't assess and really take care with balanced tasks for elderly populations, and for populations where people have had brain injuries and their balance is compromised. So they're the first things I think that come to mind. Anything come to mind for you, Christina or Mando?
Definitely on the rehabilitation side, I would definitely have to agree with you on that. Or when people are using it for concussion management, there's certain protocols that the clinicians will follow.
Mm. And hey, if you have a ceiling fan in a very small room, don't skip rope. Don't do jumping jacks. Be aware of your environment. Give yourself plenty of space. I've worked in some fairly small rooms and some fairly large rooms, and a lot can be done. I've always used large projection screens. So that, and that's something that I do recommend. Projectors are pretty cheap, and you can set them up, throw them up on a wall, use a sheet. Yeah, just be aware of your environment. I've never done it, and this is just me riffing here, Corey. I've never done it while someone's treading water, but I've always wanted to, because how cool would that be for people doing water polo? Right, but that would be like with Jackson or with my police officer. That would be more at the far end of the progression, where the water polo athlete would sit down and stand and then balance and then do some other tasks, and then all right, but then you need a back projector screen and a back projector. But imagine that, and I wouldn't recommend. I've done this with the Oculus, and I've used the NeuroTracker with the Oculus virtual reality. And I would not recommend really any physical dual task, maybe except from squatting or maybe sidestepping, because you can't see your environment. Your mind is shut off. We all know what it's like in virtual reality, where we kind of go, we end up falling against the wall because we don't have our bearings. So just take care if you're using a virtual reality headset to do this, because it's all about safety, really. Those box jumps were pretty gnarly in that with that gentleman who apparently jumped up on that thing. So there's an element of risk, but risk is a flow trigger. But it's just picking the right challenge, the right risk, and there's some risk and reward. I can't say I've had too many injuries while doing the task, thankfully. But we've had some broken glasses and some pieces of equipment where balls have been kicked that maybe weren't kicked as well as they could. So yeah, take care when you're doing anything with the ball related and balance related. I guess that's what I would say.
He's saying as well that would build cardio as well. So definitely.
Yeah. How cool is that?
Yeah.
So someone please do some treading water with a NeuroTracker, because I can't wait to see what happens, what the score is. And then, okay, forgive me, but now we're going to get someone standing on the side of the pool or in the pool with a ball. And now you've got to tread water and the ball is going to get thrown to you. And then you're going to throw it back. I mean, yes, I've spent a lot of time with athletes, and it's very easy to integrate this in sports. I feel, but it's don't think it's just about athletes, guys. So yeah, that would be an epic. I can't wait to see that video come out.
And I would say, I mean, athletes, that's our largest market, obviously performance, but definitely with the pandemic and a lot of clinicians having to have shut down over time for a period of time, it's been fantastic to be able to have the remote software where they're able to continue training their athletes on season, off season, anywhere without having to invest in a whole bunch of hardware as well, which is great. I have another question on, is there a preferred time of day to do NeuroTracker?
I love that question. I think of Dan Pink and his book, a tour de force on circadian rhythms. It's called the Power of When, and that really links to circadian rhythms. And as we generally wake up, if we're in a go to sleep at night and wake up during the day, we'll get that uptick of energy in the morning, and then we'll have kind of peak. And the Spanish know about this; they have their siesta, where there's that drop, and then they go to sleep. I was in Barcelona and everything closed down because it was time for siesta. I was going there to see Lionel Messi in Barcelona. It was pretty cool. And then you get that uptick later in the day. So that's generally one of those basic circadian rhythms. But for me, you can use it two ways. You can use it purposefully, like intentionally, to prior to a task where you want to have a strong, intense focus, concentration, or you can just have your basic time of the day. I don't think it really matters, because it doesn't matter. No one's doing the NeuroTracker World Championships. So no one's trying to become the best NeuroTracker in the world. Although I just had a bit of an insight the other day. I'd love to create the Tetris World not Tetris. That's where it's inspired from. The NeuroTracker World Championship. And the difficulty of the dual task ends up helping to kind of multiply your score, kind of like degrees of difficulty in diving. Anyway, no one's trying to, be the best NeuroTracker, person possible. But I guess we're all trying to do the best we can. I think the best thing you can do is just note and track when you train at a certain time of the day. What do your scores tell you? Just like how you can monitor your heart rate every morning using a band or a heart rate monitor. And when your heart rate's up, it kind of means that you're a bit tired. Well, in this case, if your scores are down, it generally means you're a bit tired and fatigued. So I would experiment with that. I would say in the late afternoon is when you're generally getting that second wave, that second wind in your circadian rhythm. And why not start your day with a NeuroTracker? Get your brain firing. There's a wonderful story from Spark, the book by John Ratey, talks about 0 hour PE, where early morning young elementary school children were asked to run a mile as hard as they could every single day. It wasn't a race, but they were asked to go as fast as they could and get their heart rates up. And over a period of weeks, months, years, decades, that school became a powerhouse in the world in maths and science. And they really did nothing else other than turn and switch on their kids' brains and nervous systems early on in the day. So if you did 1 or 2 sessions of NeuroTracker with some squats or some skipping rope or some side steps or whatever it is that you like to do, some breathing practices, I think that will prime you for the day. I wouldn't necessarily suggest doing it later at night, because it may just G you up. It's more of an up regulation versus a down regulation. Although if you set it at a very slow speed, maybe 50%, 30% of your, and I'm just riffing here, Christina, but if you're at night and you want to relax, maybe it could be a good idea to put on some quiet music, do some slow breathing, and put the NeuroTracker, because you can often set the NeuroTracker to a certain speed that you want, and just do a really slow session, not super frantic, because you don't want to stimulate frantically before you go to bed. That might be a useful thing for you. So prior to training, prior to the day starting, and you can train twice a day. Just don't do 30 sessions in 7 days like I did, and then I literally wore out my peripheral vision. So it's possible to wear out your peripheral vision, guys. So you can overtrain this stuff. I'm not trying to scare you, but that is an experience I've had. I was just going hard at it, and I just went a bit too hard. So I recovered pretty quickly, just took a week off and came back. That was one of those early lessons that I learned. Sorry if that was a bit off topic.
No, that's great. I mean, thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time. Please feel free to reach out to Rob directly. He's been an avid user of NeuroTracker for years. So even with the custom program builder, if you have specific populations of patients that you're working with, athletes, or for rehabilitation, and want some insight, I'm sure he would be more than happy to help you. I'm just going to leave it with this last comment from Corey. I'm just checking here 1 second. He's tried it underwater and gets oxygen deprivation as well. Corey, you need to record that when you do it next, so we can get a copy of that.
Absolutely. And as always, don't do stupid shit. I'll be pretty blunt there. Be careful when you're doing this stuff. Have a buddy. But yeah, yes, part of it is about risk and reward. I mean, there's a reason people throw themselves off cliffs and squirrel suit or free dive, because it's thrilling and it's so stimulating, but it can also lead to unfortunate circumstances. So yeah, take care while you're doing this stuff. I know that's pretty heavy, but it's always
a good important disclaimer.
it is. It's also and we're coaches and guides, and
absolutely,
we're a bit further up the mountain, maybe. So if people are thinking about joining us up here, yeah, just push yourself, add 10%, add 5%, make it a little bit harder every now and again. But yeah, I think Corey's, you're really taking on the creative, innovative aspect of NeuroTracker, and this is where it shines. Is you can innovate and create, and that in itself is rewarding and productive, and you can create a whole business niche for yourself if you become the guitar NeuroTracker guy, or the juggling NeuroTracker guy, or the sports NeuroTracker guy, or whatever. So yeah, I look forward to hearing everyone's success stories, and yeah, please reach out. I'd love to hear how you're using it. I'm here to learn as much as anyone. Thank you, Christina. Thank you to Lee and Professor Faber and all the amazing researchers over the years who are putting an amazing, and all the hard workers behind the scenes, Francis um, and Scott, and you're a great team, and it's a pleasure. It's an honor to speak for you guys.
Thank you so much, Rob. This is what makes what we do. We love working with clinicians like yourself and making a difference. So thank you everybody for your time today.